Lately, I've been having a number of conversations with people about how to assess and determine your marketing budget. So I thought I'd make a short little video that explains the entire concept to you. So there's a couple different ways that you can come up with what your marketing budget should be. The most standard practice is to take 7 to 13% of your annual revenue. So if you were to make $1 million a year, you would take 7 to 13% of that, $70,000 to $130,000, and that would become your marketing budget. And you would allocate that to everything except for the overhead and payroll of the people that would be working in your marketing department. Now, there's a caveat to that, which is that if you are a company that is seeking to grow, another approach is to actually take 7 to 13% of the target annual revenue. So let's say you're a $1 million company and you want to be a $2 million company. If you were to assess 7 to 13% of your current annual revenue, you're not giving yourself the budget you need to grow into a company of 2 million. So you would instead take the 2 million and you would go from 70,000 to 130 to instead $140,000 to $260,000. So you take 7 to 13% of either your existing revenue, which allows you to somewhat grow and probably maintain where you are, or of the revenue goal that you actually have. So that's the first and most common way to do it. Now, another way to do it, and this is probably, I guess, more common in practice than it is in terms of what's being recommended, which is to set the budget arbitrarily. However you wind up doing that, you say, oh, look at our money, the money that we have, we're going to give this much to marketing. And then you kind of back out from there. How would you allocate that budget? And then from there, you determine, do we need to ask for a little bit more, or did we allocate a little bit too much? So you would go about it kind of in a backwards kind of roundabout sort of way. Now, this is perfectly acceptable. It's something that I've seen a lot in my time, but it is not what I would advise in terms of being sort of strategic about where you currently are and where you want to go. I think it's a better use to kind of follow that rule, because then you can iterate on that over time. As you grow as a company, you can continue taking that 7 to 13% and determining whether that was actually enough. If you do it kind of arbitrarily and you back into it, that's fine too. But what I would recommend in either case is that whatever that budget is, you have to then think about how you're going to go about allocating that budget to different things. You've got things like billboards and TV and radio and print on the traditional side, direct mail. Then you have things that are in the digital world, things like SEO, paid search, social media, content marketing, any number of different, digital online tactics. And what you really want to do is sort of use this formula to determine where you should be allocating your budget, and then prioritize based upon this. So the formula that I tend to use, it's not like a strict formula because some of it is a bit subjective, but the way that I think about it is there are really 3 factors I'm looking for in kind of ranking the different marketing activities I might do. So the first would be, what is the overall cost of it? So for instance, you know that a billboard is going to cost you a certain amount out of the gate, between $1,500 and $7,000 depending upon placement. I think that's a good range, relatively reasonable range for a billboard. And then you've got things like a Facebook ad, which if you're doing a video ad could cost you, anywhere from, a couple $100 a month, all the way up to, there are companies that are spending millions of dollars a month on Facebook ads. So you want to look at just what is the cost that you're going to be in for doing this activity. The second thing you're going to want to look at is the likelihood of results, specifically measurable results. So if you put up a billboard, it's very possible you get an immense response to it, but it's not going to be particularly measurable, although there are ways around that using trackable links and things like that. But generally speaking, you don't have the same sort of clickstream data that you do if somebody clicks something from one place and lands on another. So you want to look at the likelihood of results. Things like Google Ads have very, very high likelihood of results because people are typing something that they're looking for, and provided that your keywords are matching their intent, you're actually providing them with a solution to the query that they're inputting. So their intent is very high. Whereas anything that's interruptive, something like a billboard or a television commercial, is going to generally be less effective because people aren't in the mindset where they're actually seeking out that issue or that problem. So things like SEO, things like paid search, those tend to do really well. And if you do sort of lower down the funnel remarketing campaigns using ads, typically those can perform really, really well as well. The third factor is going to be the ability to precise target. So the more precisely you can target with the higher likelihood of results and at the lowest possible cost is what you generally want to put at the top. So that's typically why you see digital marketing channels being used and being favored in business nowadays more so than the traditional type of marketing, because it's more measurable, it's usually a lower cost, and it has much more precise targeting. So put those things together, and then that's how you allocate that budget, whatever it might be. Now, there's one other thing I want to talk about when it comes to budget, which is project budgeting, which is a little bit different than your overall budget as a marketing organization. Let's say you were going to do a campaign. Maybe you were going to do some Facebook ads, you're going to do a billboard, or whatever it was going to be. the way you want to think about your budget is that the budget that you're going to be setting aside, you want to think in terms of two different metrics, which is return on investment and return on ad spend. Return on investment is taking into account all of the different things that you're spending, whereas return on ad spend is just looking at what did I get for the money that I put in directly into ads. Generally, what you're going to be looking for is a 3-to-1 return on either of those as kind of your benchmark for whether or not something is worth it. So if you put $1,000 into a billboard campaign, you want it to return $3,000 worth of value. So it could be a hiring campaign, it could be a sales campaign, whatever it is. You want it to return at least $3,000 worth of value on that $1,000. So think in terms of what is the value of whatever the thing is that I'm doing, and then you can kind of back out from there and start to think what should my budget for this project be. If I want to sell 100 of these widgets and the widgets are $5 a piece, that means I'm going to have $500 of potential revenue from it. Let's say my costs are 100. That means there's a $400 margin there that I can play with. I would take 1/3 of that 400, and that would give me my budget. $133 or whatever that might be would give me my budget for what I should be willing to spend to make that $400 of profit. Hopefully that makes sense. So overall budget, 7 to 13% of either your existing annual revenue or your target annual revenue. You could back into your budget and then allocate all of those funds. And if you're doing a project, you generally want to be looking for a 3-to-1 return on ad spend or return on investment so that you're making money with all of the campaigns that you're doing. Hopefully that helps you to set your marketing budget. Good luck and Godspeed.